Good afternoon, live from Toronto on the GBCam network. This is the Chat Up Show, the show where we catch you up with the chat up of our weekly headlines. I'm your host, Elizabeth Elordi, and I hope that you are ready to chat it up with me today. Now, as always, you know you can keep up with the GBCam network in various ways. You can continue to listen and watch live 24/7 at www.gbcam.tv or www.gbcam.fm, where you can also catch up on any past shows you may have missed, check out our upcoming show schedule, check out our breaking news tab to be informed on what's going on around the globe, and liking, sharing, and commenting to join in the conversation. Also, make sure to download our free app available for all iOS and Android devices. Just search GBKM and you'll be able to take us on the go with you. You'll be able to listen and watch live 24/7. You'll be notified every time we go live, so you won't have to miss another show. But if you do, no worries, because you can still check out past shows, check out our upcoming show schedule, breaking news, like, share, comment, and all of that good stuff right on the app. Available for all iOS and Android devices. Again, it's free. Just search GBKM. You can also continue to watch us on Facebook and YouTube at GBKM Network, where you can continue to join in the conversation by liking, sharing, and commenting and subscribing. You can also follow us on Instagram and Twitter at GBKM Network for more updates on what's going on right here at GBKM Network. Now, there's a lot that's going on in the world, but I do want to start off just remotely, locally, right here in Ontario, and what's some new updates on what's going on with our pandemic situation. Now, as of today, proof of COVID-19 vaccination is no longer required at most Ontario restaurants, gyms, and movie theaters, while nightclubs, sporting and concert venues can get rid of their capacity limits and restrictions lifted on social gathering sizes. So basically it smells like freedom for a lot of us, right? Now we won't have to show our proof of vaccination when we want to go eat in most establishments. Of course, the government has left it up to business owners as to whether they can choose to ask for proof or not, but it's no longer a requirement for the province to require proof of vaccination for these establishments. Ontario Premier Doug Ford has said that mask mandates will also likely be in place for at least a couple more weeks. He is going off of the advice of health officials. Same with the proof of vaccination. Now, a lot of people were thinking, why did it come in to go away so quickly? Well, Premier Ford said that this wasn't a permanent measure. It was supposed to be a short-lived temporary measure, according to the suggestions of our health officials. As for mask mandates, a lot of people are hoping that that's going to go away sooner. As I mentioned, it's going to take a couple more weeks, but officials do say that once it is removed, then it's probably going to be across the board in schools, restaurants, and indoor gathering spaces, grocery stores, what have you, where you've been wearing a mask. If you're wearing one now, you probably won't be when they do choose to remove the mask mandate. But for now, it is still in place, and you do still have to adhere to the mask bylaws that especially the City of Toronto has put in place, where you do have to wear your mask when you are indoors and in spaces where social gathering isn't as, social distancing in social gatherings isn't as easy. So just think that even though capacity limits are removed, you do not need a proof of vaccination to go to certain places. Just think you still have to wear your mask in most of these places. So those are just some of your quick COVID updates, just to let you know what's going on right here for us as we move on into the spring and we start seeing the weather hopefully warm up a little bit more and things start opening and capacities are lifted. Now, this past week has left a lot of people feeling shocked by the news of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And the ongoing crisis has essentially left so many people stunned that this is something that we're witnessing in Europe in 2022. But on the other hand, this is also something that we've witnessed many times in other countries, in other areas of the world, where a country will go in to invade with their military in efforts of, maybe not taking over, but spreading ideologies, if you will. This isn't necessarily new. We've seen war-torn countries before, but it's happening in a space where, most of the world feels as though it wouldn't have happened, and that is Europe, and it's happening to Ukraine. And the aftermath of the invasion has also brought up a lot of conversation as to how immigrants are treated during these types of situations, during such a crisis, especially Nigerian immigrants. Now we've seen more footage being shared and spread on social media of what majorly students really are facing as they try to flee Ukraine and go to the neighboring countries of Poland, Hungary, Romania, going to Belarus even. Some people are going through going to that country to try and flee from Ukraine. But as they're trying to flee, they're being stopped and being harassed and essentially facing discrimination even in the midst of a crisis and in the midst of war. Now, to join me to discuss the Nigerian response to this update is none other than Public Relations Officer for the Nigerian Canadian Association, Jabez Napoleon Ogbole. So please join me in welcoming him back to the Chat Up Show. Welcome back to the show, Jabez. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. And yourself, Elizabeth? I'm very happy to be here today, and I hope you're doing well.
I'm doing well, thank you. Of course, under the circumstances, it's still kind of a dark cloud, sad to see what's unfolding right now in Ukraine and on the borders. Now, what was your first reaction to seeing the news unfold and the aftermath of the invasion in Ukraine?
I mean, it came as a surprise, like most people. We understood there was tension between Russia and Ukraine, and some of the discussions going on around the West with regards to this tension. But nobody ever suspected, or nobody ever thought that in February Russia would attack this country. And it came as a piece of a shock, and that's why everybody has been trying to do their best as much as possible to see how they can assist Ukrainians in their own country, those who are fleeing the violence, those who decide to remain, and of course Nigerians who are in Ukraine as well decide to leave Ukraine because of this crisis. And we'll be trying our best to see how we can help everyone.
And what does that help look like so far in terms of helping, especially Nigerians who are trying to flee Ukraine, from the perspective of the NCA?
Nigerian Canadian Association, we are a community-based organization. Our mandate is to help Nigerians, who are in Canada, and of course we have satellite organizations all across the world. Ukraine we have Nigerians in Ukraine, so it's also we have Nigerians in Canada who are relatives, who are family, who are friends in Ukraine. So it is our business to make sure that our community members in Canada who has family and friends in Ukraine, get the help, get the information, and get the assistance that they require. So what we'll be doing is, reaching out to government back home. We have what we call the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Not only that, we're also blessed with another government agency called the Nigerian Diaspora Commission. So we'll be getting a whole lot of information to know what's the plan. And luckily, the response has been very, very positive, whereby we have been getting a whole lot of contact numbers of people in various borders. So if Nigerians in Ukraine can get to the borders with Poland, with Hungary, so there are people who are actually in those borders, there are camps set up to make sure the welfare of Nigerians are taken care of. And not only that, the federal government of Nigeria as well is also making sure that they can get planes. So I'm aware that there's a couple of airlines right now that is actually making plans to evacuate Nigerians from neighboring countries, from Hungary, from Slovakia, from Romania, and of course Poland. And so every Nigerian out there will be using the social media to actually push this information, because that's one of the best to get the word across to everybody. So that way Nigerians in Ukraine or in these borders can know what sort of help or where to go to get assistance if they want to evacuate.
Yeah. And social media has played a big role, especially with the outcry of the treatment that a lot of Nigerians were facing at these borders. And we actually have a clip that's been compiled of some people's firsthand experience trying to cross over to essentially freedom, fleeing the conflict. Let's take a look.
So did you feel a difference of treatment between Ukrainians, refugees, and yourself?
Sure. She said, but I'm not a Ukrainian, so I should leave.
Il donnait plus de bénéfices aux Ukrainiens.
I'm like, we're humans too.
I met Joanna while I was walking towards the border crossing between Poland and Ukraine. She's 17 years old, from Nigeria, and she's one of the many African students that found themselves trapped in Ukraine when the Russian invasion started. This is what she says happened to her as she was fleeing the war. So you arrived with this?
Yeah. I'm an African, a Nigerian precisely, studying in VN Karazin National University, Kharkov, Ukraine. I'm studying medicine and I'm a first year medical student. Yeah. At first, I wasn't seeing the need to leave because there was a time Russia actually gave a date for the war. It got so serious. There were bombings in Kharkov, my city. We had to hide in underground bunkers for our safety. We could hear bomb sounds. We weren't sure of the next second, the next minute, and then there was chaos everywhere. So I just had to leave. I've never gone through something like that, something close to that. I booked a taxi to take me to the Poland border. He collected a whole lot of money from me. He was supposed to drop me a medica, but then he did not. He said, no, just walk down a bit and you'll see the Poland border. And then we started walking thinking, okay, we are close to Poland border. I mean, we had to walk the whole day. Not even the whole day, throughout the night. We were very cold, we were hungry. We couldn't sleep at all. Even if I wanted to, it was just too cold to sleep. I was shivering.
Then you arrived at the border patrol between Ukraine and Poland. And what happened to you there? Can you explain to me?
When I got there, I don't know. I would say I didn't like the experience there. They just kept us there for no reason, for I don't know why. And they were letting other Ukrainians go. We were there for like 5 hours more, and then a Ukrainian just came. Like, she didn't even need to ask or anything. She just passed. Like, once they see a Ukrainian coming, they even hit us to leave the way. Like, hit us. I'm like, leave, and let her pass. And I mean, the fact that we're not in our country doesn't mean that we're not humans. I'm not saying they shouldn't let Ukrainians pass, but I'm like, let everybody pass. Like, we are all going to find a refuge, so let us go.
Joanna says she eventually managed to cross the border with a group of Ukrainian women. After I spoke to her, I met with dozens of other African students who also made it to Poland and had a similar statement.
When we heard about the attack, the bombs and everything, we knew that, okay, this is real and it is time to leave. Meanwhile, it was already too late because some of us had flight that day. Flights were cancelled. While in the train, a lady just saw me and told me to get out of the train for no reason. The train we got into together.
We walked for 8 good hours to get to the border. So when we get to the border, they just pack blacks. Like, they pack us at one place. For more than 3 hours, we are just standing there.
And I asked her, why do I have to leave the train? She said they only let children and women into the train. And I asked her, am I a man? I'm also a woman. She said, oh, but I'm not a Ukrainian, so I should leave. And I was like, this train doesn't belong to you. This is the government train, and he wants people to get to the border with this train. And she was like, she's a Ukrainian, and it is our government. So she has the right to be on the train. I should get down.
They left us outside. People were crying, begging them. They don't even open the door for anybody. They leave us outside under that code for 2 days before they can open the border for us.
Arrivé au niveau de la frontière, la police de l'Ukraine décidait que tous les Ukrainiens soient évacués avant que les Africains soient aussi évacués. Donc ça a donné plusieurs bagarres au niveau de la frontière parce qu'il y avait une accumulation d'Africains au niveau de la frontière.
Ukraine is home to tens of thousands of African students studying engineering or medicine. Amid the chaos, Polish authorities said that third country nationals would be allowed to enter the country. So you still have a lot of travel to do.
Yeah, I do.
And how do you feel?
And there you have it. Jay Bess, what are some of your thoughts on the video that we just witnessed and hearing the first-hand accounts of what Nigerian students, I mean, as young as 17 years old, are experiencing trying to flee the conflict?
Yeah, it's not pleasant, but war is not pleasant either. There's an invasion going on right now in Ukraine. Definitely, people are tensed, people are angry, people are depressed, and obviously, this is not a reflection of all Ukrainians. I've got Ukrainians and friends here in Toronto as well. But you have to remember when there's a conflict, people tend to act negatively towards one another. And I'm sure Ukrainians even have stories to tell about some of the negative treatment they get from themselves. But that's not an excuse, because as humans, humanity is very important. We always try as much as possible to treat our neighbors the way we want to be treated. But some people may not just have that temperament, they not have that sort of exposure or mindset. But what I encourage Nigerians and every African there, it's keep calm, use wisdom, and use those contact numbers that's been shared by your embassies, by your government. Make sure you make a contact in borders and make sure you know where you're going. And that way, these people can actually make arrangements or logistics to make sure you can cross, get access to the, welfare and accommodations you need. Because if you go on your own, this is what may happen, whereby you get negative treatment from people who are really angry and depressed. And when there's war, people are angry at themselves, angry at everybody. And when you don't look like people sometimes, that even gets more complicated. But we Africans are not new to this, so I just ask for everyone to be calm and use wisdom at this time.
I think it's important that just to reiterate the point that you made, that it's war and that people's emotions are heightened. Everyone's just trying to get to safety. And, some people may not react in the most graceful way as we would hope. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is ensuring that we're all just trying to do as much as we can on both fronts, from the NCA to even our government, to try and help our people to reach safety. Now, some folks have criticized the speed at which our government responded to the conflict and responded to aiding Nigerian citizens to evacuate, to come back home, or just to get to these bordering countries. What are your thoughts on that?
What happened was quite sudden. Like even the young lady said, everybody had a date in mind when Russia would attack. Well, actually, they invaded the country earlier than that. So it took everybody by surprise. And of course, it takes time to plan logistics. So, and I'm sure if you do comparison with other countries, you understand, you find out that people are saying some government are slow to respond. But trust me, it takes a whole lot of time to coordinate, make arrangement with airlines, make arrangement with neighboring countries. There's a couple of laws. There's a whole lot of planning and logistics that's involved. But all I can say is that this happened last week, and since this has happened, a whole lot of actions has been taken, especially by the Nigerian government. And I know for sure from today going forward, a whole lot of planes would have taken evacuees back home, and that's progress. So I would say that we can only do the best we can with a short time that this happened.
Yeah. And I mean, our Nigerian president has come out and condemned the treatment of Nigerians. He said on Monday that, quote, all who flee a conflict situation have the same right to safe passage under UN Convention, and the color of their passport or their skin should make no difference. From video evidence, firsthand reports, and from those in contact with Nigerian consular officials, there have been unfortunate reports of Ukrainian police and security personnel refusing to allow Nigerians to board buses and trains heading towards Ukraine-Poland border. And I think that there was the indication there that it's officials and police officers. So it's not that we're thinking that it's just the average Ukrainian who's also trying to flee. It's law enforcement officials who are trying to handle the situation as best as they can, that we're seeing in these videos, physically removing passengers from planes and trains. So I think that that's an important distinction to make as well when we're discussing what's going on right now. It's that it's not just random attacks that are happening. It's that these are people who are in positions that are trying to kind of just deal with the situation as best as they can. What are your thoughts on the response from our president in general?
No, I'm very happy with the response from the president. I mean, it's shown that he's a leader. It's shown that he cares. You see that the news actually talks about allocation of funds to make sure these individuals are taken out. In the past, we haven't seen such a response. Like I said, within a week, we're already airlifting Nigerians, from neighboring countries of Ukraine to get them back home. And of course, with regards to, these security forces, be it police officials or whatnot, having making this negative treatment, of course, it's not professional. It's not something that anyone will accept, regardless of the situation. But like I said, tensions are high. There's no excuse for that, but still, we must learn to do better, because it can happen to anyone. Anybody can be a refugee in any country. Nobody wants that. Most of our generation have never witnessed war, but it's an ugly thing, and you see the worst of people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think even just to that effect as well, just showing each other compassion is something that we've always considered as an important part of building our community and supporting our community, and just having the compassion enough to like speak out and say, hey, this is what we expect from our government, this is what we need from our government to help our people who are in crises. Do you think that the pressure that was put on the government made a difference in terms of the kind of response that we're seeing? I mean, we just saw on the screen that President Buhari approved the $8.5 million budget to evacuate Nigerians from in Ukraine.
Oh yes, time is of essence, and we must do everything within our power. Like you said previously, we have a whole lot of Nigerians, most especially students. And we're talking about students, we're talking about the youths. These are very young individuals, and I'm sure most Nigerians we have or know someone who has a child studying in Ukraine. Of course, I know a few people that are studying in Ukraine, so it's very, very important that we do a very quick, the government make a very swift decisions to make sure that we can get these kids back home. So I do applaud them for that, and I mean we can always improve, and that's the importance of social media now because everything's on record. Yeah. So everybody tries to do their best.
Exactly. Now, speaking of social media, the Nigerian Ministry of Foreign Affairs has been pretty active in terms of putting information out there. We've got some of the earlier press releases from this past weekend where it was giving updates on what the situation is and advising Nigerians who are seeking shelter or safety to go to the Polish border, to go to Hungary, to Romania, as that those are the places that they have support waiting for them, and accommodation and feeding and even transportation as well. There was another press release that was released for Nigerians going to Poland. There are different checkpoints where there will be buses to pick up Nigerians crossing the border to various locations across Poland to reach safety. What are your thoughts on this response and this public notice being put out there by our Ministry of Foreign Affairs in terms of helping Nigerians reach safety?
I'll say it's very helpful, because once you're in a situation like this, you want to know that the government is looking out for you. You want to know what actions are the government taking to ensure your safety. And for the fact that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Nigerian government in general is bringing out these communications and letting people know what they are doing and how they can get help, it speaks a whole lot, and that shows that indeed they're showing empathy and they really care and they really want these Nigerians to come back home safe.
Yeah, there's like even a little note that they put there that if you do have people that you care about who are currently trying to find safety, please also remain calm. Parents, guardians, and wards of Nigerians in Ukraine are please enjoined to remain calm as the federal government of Nigeria is working very hard to get them all home. I think that, a lot of people are pretty proud that the Nigerian government is standing out to say, like, hey, we do not accept the treatment of our people, and we're going to do as much as we can to get them to safety. And it's not just the Nigerian government. I mean, it's the African Union. It's the UNHCR as well, for human rights, that came out and basically said that people who are fleeing and trying to find safety should not also have to deal with discrimination on top of that. That this is a time where we don't have to see color, we don't see passports, we just see that these are human beings and we're all in a similar situation of just trying to get to safety, and that shouldn't be something that we're dealing with. Now, the number of Nigerian students, or Nigerians rather, in Ukraine that we know of, according to our Minister of Foreign Affairs, is about 8,000. Now, he said that as of today, they're going to have plans to start evacuating more than 1,500 Nigerians to get to safety. In what ways? You mentioned the NCA is working to connect folks to, contacts and resources so that they can get in contact with their loved ones. What other ways can folks, reach out to hopefully get a little more information, especially here in Canada with the Nigerian Canadian Association? What other steps are you taking in terms of bridging the gap across the continents?
Oh yeah, so some of the steps we're taking, like we're a Nigerian Canadian Association based here in Canada. So what we're also doing as well is looking at the government of Canada response and taking those information to share amongst the community members. So that way, remember, we have Nigerians who lived in Ukraine all their life, So Ukraine is their home, and if they are being forced to leave now because of this invasion, it puts them in a very, very difficult position, which nobody wants to be in. But we'll be trying to make sure that we pass the information across, because Nigerians, I mean, being one of the largest population in Africa, we're almost in every countries of the world. So as a result, I'm sure there are people who are not in Canada, who are not in Ukraine, but have families there. So this information that we share across our network, we share on various platforms, it's gonna be very, very helpful to a lot of Nigerians out there, including non-Nigerians as well. Because remember, the African Union, we try to make sure that we carry everyone along. So I'm sure definitely if they are Ghanaians and East Africans or West Africans, South Africans, the same help will be rendered to them as well. Because, like we said, we have to be a good neighbor, and that's the best we can do. And of course, we also in support, and we also, want to help the Ukrainian community in Canada as well. And so what we'll be doing is taking note of some of the events that has been happening, and of course, promoting that, and see how Nigerian community as well can also attend such events, be it fundraising, be it solidarity, be it any sort of demonstration, peaceful demonstration, to also show that Nigerians are in support of Ukrainians.
Yeah. And that's also just, thank you for bringing that up, is that also recognizing that Ukrainian citizens are also going through the similar things. So showing support and solidarity, and that our thoughts and prayers are with all of Ukraine, all people who live there, citizens, nationals, what have you, immigrants. All our thoughts and prayers are with them right now going through this struggle. Now, I think a lot of people are wondering what's going to happen next. I mean, where could this possibly go? How could this affect foreign policy and how relationships with certain countries? But just from the Nigerian perspective, what do you think could possibly be like the next steps from our government in terms of dealing with the influx of Nigerians coming back home with the evacuations? What do you think that could look like potentially? I know it's a little far-fetched to think of if we had a crystal ball to look into the future, but we don't. But what are your thoughts and what are your opinions on that outcome of this situation now?
We can only hope for the best and make sure that those who are returning home, for those that have family, great. But obviously, if you left the country a long time ago and you've settled in Ukraine has become your home, and now you are being forced to leave back home, it's a lot of challenge. So, I mean, some of the things that the government can do is to make sure they can identify those individuals and give them the necessary support that they need. But most importantly, we do not want a war between Russia and Ukraine. We do not want a war between Russia and Europe or North America. We want this to be resolved peacefully, because war is not good for anybody. Yes, Ukraine is being bombarded now. Ukrainians are being killed. Russians are being killed as well. But in the grand scheme of things, if a full-blown war was to occur, it affects everybody, including us in Canada. There's going to be trade restrictions, there's going to be travel restrictions, and nobody wants to have all these disruptions. Yeah. Look at today, the effect of the war. Stock prices are dropping, interest rates are going up. Nigeria as a country does a lot of trade with Russia, does a lot of trade with Ukraine. So these are all going to affect everybody. And we just came out of a very, very 2 years of very tough time with COVID restrictions and lockdown. So the economy was trying to get back on its feet again, and jobs was starting to get back on their feet again, and business was trying to open again. Then all of a sudden we have this situation. So it's not good for everybody. So all I can say is that the Nigerian government will work with their allies or work with Russia and Ukraine to resolve this conflict as soon as possible.
And on that note, I think it's a great time to take a quick commercial break. But once we're back, we'll continue discussing Nigerians in Ukraine trying to flee the conflict. Stay tuned.
Canada's #1 African barbecue, the Suya Spot. Serving and satisfying your suya needs from multiple locations across the GTA, including Scarborough, downtown Toronto, North York, Woodbridge, and Mississauga. Also located in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Visit any location today or stay home and order through
DoorDash, Uber Eats, and Skip the Dishes.
For more information, check out our website at www.thesuyaspot.com or call the toll-free line at +1 866 448-7892. The Suya Spot. You built it, now use it. Vous l'avez construit.
Hello and welcome back to the Chat Up Show. I'm your host, Elizabeth Oloidi, and today I'm joined by special guest, Public Relations Officer of the Nigerian Canadian Association, Jugbes Napoleon Ogbole, and we've been discussing the current situation for Nigerians fleeing Ukraine amidst the Russia-Ukraine invasion. Now, before we went on the break, we were kind of talking about what this could mean for the future. And I think a lot of people are worried that this could be, the outbreak for World War III, that, a lot of folks have been kind of saying it has been building up for some time. I mean, if we look back in as when Bush was still president and Ukraine was talking about joining NATO, that Russia had an issue with that back then, and that this was kind of a pot boiling and kind of waiting and simmering and boiling, and now we've all seen the eruption and the catalyst of it all to lead to what we've seen, the events that have kind of happened over the last week. But it's just a wonder what that could mean in terms of a spillover to the rest of the world. Like we had mentioned that there are a lot of countries that have deals with Russia currently, Nigeria being one of them. For a lot of people, it's gas and oil that they're thinking, how could that impact them? Now seeing the sanctions that different countries are placing on Russia, how that could then spill over and what that would mean for the rest of the world. How do we go from here, in your opinion, Jugbes, as people who don't want to, we don't want to freak out, but we want to remain calm, but we also want to be realistic as to what is going on right now. So how would you say that the NCA is kind of contributing to disseminating information, but still, making sure that folks know that, yes, we're being realistic, but it's also not a cause for us to go grab our own weapons to try and defend our borders, if you will?
Yeah. So I'm not a politician, neither am I an expert in foreign policy. But in my opinion, NCA, what we can do as an organization is obviously, continue to reach out to the business community, continue to reach out to religious organizations. We Africans are very religious people, so use our faith and use that to reach out to a lot of people. I bring that up because we congregate a lot in churches and in mosques, and that's another medium of passing out information. When we work with these organizations and non-for-profit, they can also help us reach out to their members and let them, pray and of course call for calm. Every one of us know people in government. Government are not computers; they are human beings. So it's to make sure that we use common sense and try and de-escalate the situation, and let's go back to normalcy. Because, like I said before, nobody wants a full-blown war. It's going to affect everyone. We're all going to be losers at the end of it.
Yeah, exactly. None of us have army training, so. But now I kind of want to pivot into the work that the Nigerian Canadian Association does here for Nigerians. This whole situation is kind of brought to light, like, what are we doing for our community where we are? How are we uplifting our community? How are we providing support? So what are some of the ways that, NCA has, what are some of the goals, rather, does NCA have for 2022 in terms of uplifting and building and strengthening the Nigerian community here? Because the work that the diaspora does is just as effective as the work that's happening back home.
Well, yeah, definitely. Nigerian Canadian Association is a non-for-profit community-based organization. So we are actually committed to addressing, be it integration into the Canadian system, education, health, housing, social services, cultural, economic development needs of Nigerians in Canada. So some of the things we do is we do a whole lot of information sessions. We do a whole lot of seminars, because the most important things that you can do for a new migrant is give them information that they need to thrive. So we continue to do that. Most of our resources are shared on various platforms on social media. We reach out to other communities as well. Be it African communities, be it any country you can think of, reach out to Canadians as well, and we try to make sure that everybody is part of the progress. So we continue to do different programs. We celebrated Black History Month just passed, and that's some of the things we do. What are the contributions of Nigerians, the blacks in general, but Nigerians specifically, because of our organization, to Canada as a whole? And we reach out to community leaders, reach out to business tycoons who have Nigerian descent, and what they do is empower, use the opportunity to also mentor new migrants and young Nigerians in Canada on how they can take advantage of the Canadian system to prosper and, of course, give back.
And now, you mentioned Black History Month has just gone past. Now we're pivoting into Women's History Month. And there are so many Nigerian women who have been so influential in just culture in general. What are some of the ways the NCA is going to be celebrating women this month?
So we actually have a program coming up to celebrate the International Women's Day. It's a very, very wonderful program. So for everyone watching and everyone who's going to see this recording afterwards, please make sure you attend the event, because the title is Breaking the Bias. So women are coming together to talk about some of the bias that's out there, and what are the ways around it. We also have cultural events. We also have other activities and entertainment, and of course makeup, etc., where women can come together and network. Okay, network is very important, because I believe so much in group economics. We always promote that. If you can do much alone, how much more can you do? When you group of similar, like-minded individuals. So that's what we keep promoting. Yes, celebrate this event. It's actually March the 12th, I believe.
March 12th. Okay, great. And how could people find out more about the events or more about the services that the NCA is providing for 2022?
Oh, definitely. So I'm the public relations officer, so I always share my number publicly. I'm not going to share my number on this platform as well. Okay. It's 647-219-6319. Reach out to me or go to our website. We have a tab on our website called Events, where we put our past and upcoming events there. Check out our social media pages. We're Nigerian Canadian Association, NCA GTA. We're the Greater Toronto chapter. Check us out on Instagram. We're on YouTube. We're on Twitter as well. That way you can know about our programs. But the good thing is that we're on WhatsApp as well. We use WhatsApp a lot, because we know a lot of Nigerians use that particular application. And reach out to me, and you can add you to that group as well. And we always share our programs and services and upcoming events.
Great. On the screen now, it's just showing the event that's going to be happening on Saturday, March 12th. It is Break the Bias. I love that theme for International Women's Day celebration, with a lot of special guest speakers lined up to break the bias as to what it means to be a woman in this world, right? Sorry, Jay. Yeah, there we go. Great. So break the bias, so make sure you check that out. Now, when we think of the associations, it's not just, your mission isn't just about, building up Canadians as well. It's bridging the gap between here and back home. Yes. Why is that so important for us to have in the association's mission and opinion?
Is there one thing that we Africans sometimes neglect, and which the new generation has seen the importance, is history. Okay, you must know where you are coming from. If you do not know where you're coming from, how do you get to your final destination? So it's very important that we bridge that gap. Okay. Majority of us are migrants. There's so many people of Nigerian descent, maybe by marriage or by birth, but they're all Canadians. This is Canada is their country. And we cater to those individuals as well, and help integrate them, let them know about some of the cultural services that we offer. And don't forget, we encourage, children who are non-Canadian as their home, even though their parents are Nigerians, or people who become Nigerian by marriage or adoption, to also visit back home. And so that's some of the services we also render as well, to give them the necessary information that they need, give them access to Nigerian embassy in Ottawa, should they have any, should they require any assistance as well. So we continue to do this to make sure that, even though you left your country as a migrant, when you are in Canada, definitely you always get the assistance that you require to make sure that your stay in Canada is as enjoyable and as nice as possible.
Yes. And if you don't strengthen the ties, how could we then affect change in our country while we're here? Just because we're living in a different country doesn't make us any less Nigerian, and doesn't make us any less important to the growth of our overall prosperity, right?
That's right. Exactly. Everybody. This is my own personal opinion. Everyone is a migrant. Okay, so wherever you find peace of mind, wherever you find progress, is your home. So if you are a Nigerian and you're in Canada, and you found peace of mind, and you decide to adopt Canada as your home country, of course, why not? However, you must continue to contribute back to the society. And of course, never forget where you come from, because you always have extended families back in Nigeria. So try as much as possible, keep that link. Very important.
Wonderful. Thank you. And just before we go, just to bring it back to what's going on in the world, just a final message from the NCA to Nigerians and everyone right now who are trying to find safety in Ukraine during this time?
Yeah, so for everyone trying to find safety, be vigilant, prayerful, make sure that you keep, in contact with people also outside of the country to get latest information. The advice from most government to their citizens in Ukraine is to leave, because with this invasion, it's not a good thing, because it's uncalled for, and we don't know how far it's going to go. So the best thing would be to, if you can find safety and you can evacuate peacefully, do that. And then, of course, we will continue to bring that information from the Canadian government, from the Nigerian government, and begin to share that, on various platforms, so that wherever you may be, you can continue to be informed and know what services are available to you wherever you may be.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Jigbes, and take care, stay safe. Enjoy the lack of vaccination proofs that we have and capacity limits being lifted now in Ontario.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, and it's been great, having me on the show, and look forward to coming back in the future.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
We look
Stay
forward
safe.
to having you. Take care. And with that, just to round off and conclude today's Chat Up Show, our thoughts and prayers continue to be with those in Ukraine and in Russia right now during this conflict, this war. This invasion did take a lot of people by surprise, but now that it's here, it's time for us to all stand together in solidarity to show our compassion for one another as humans during this time. It can't be easy. Tensions are high, but folks just need a safe haven or a glimmer of hope. And if you're able to share that with someone, sharing information using social media platforms that we have access to try and spread awareness, just share how folks can get to safety, how they can get more information, who they can speak to, they can be in contact with. Any little helps during these times, because at the end of the day, as Jigbes said, we are all migrants and we all are citizens of this world. This is our only earth. So we have to take care of it as much as we take care of each other as well. And with that, I will see you the same time, same place next week. Make sure you continue to watch the GBKM network. You can listen and watch live 24/7 at www.gbkm.tv or www.gbkm.fm. Also, make sure you check out our breaking news tab, where we continue to roll out more information and more breaking news as it's updated on the current situation in Ukraine and in Russia right now, and even things that are going on around the world. So make sure you check that out. That's available on our web station, and as well as our free app that you need to download right now by just searching GBKM. It's available for all iOS and Android devices. You can take us on the go, and you'll be notified every time we go live. You can also continue to watch us on Facebook and YouTube at GBKM Network, where you can join in the conversation by liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. Or follow us on Instagram and Twitter at GBKM Network, where we also give you more updates on what's going on right here at GBKM. You can also follow me, your host, Elizabeth Aloidi, on Twitter and Instagram at TIS_Liz_O for more updates on what's going on right here at the Chat Up Show. Take care, stay safe, and our thoughts and prayers are with Ukraine right now. Goodbye.
Is deeply disturbing. But more disturbing is the fact that most Nigerians, most Africans, indeed most people in the world, have not heard the other side of the story from the Russian perspective. There are always two sides to a story. If you go to court and hear just one side, you don't hear the other, you can never administer justice. If you go and listen to what one person says and don't listen to the person that they are referring to has to say about a matter, you will never achieve justice. What is unfolding in the Ukraine, in the West, between Russia and NATO, something that may well end up as a third world war if we are not careful. First of all, you must appreciate the fact that Russia was encircled by NATO, literally, encircled by enemies. You must also appreciate the fact that they felt that it was unacceptable for the Ukraine to move too close to the West and even to contemplate the idea of having membership of NATO. The minute that happened, that is something that the Russians were bound to react to, And it was getting close to that. Imagine a situation whereby the Russian Federation had nuclear weapons and had a nuclear pact with Canada on the northern borders of America, or had a pact, military pact, and nuclear weapons in Mexico on the southern border of America. Of course, that would be unacceptable to the Americans. Or, for example, if Cuba had the same, the Americans would react in a very dramatic and forceful manner. And nobody would blame them for being forceful in the defense of their own motherland, and also to ensure that they are not able to be wiped off the face of the earth at one stroke because there's a nuclear power right next to them. That is the perspective of the Russians. There's another aspect that a lot of people don't know. Most of eastern Ukraine are peopled by Russian-speaking individuals who want to be part and parcel of the Russian Federation. Remember, there was one country before. They have separatist movements there that are fighting to leave Ukraine and be part of Russia. And rather like some people in this country believe that Biafra should break off from Nigeria, they have exercised their right of self-determination, so they want to be part of Russia, and they were being slaughtered by the Ukrainian forces, something that the West and the rest of Ukraine turned a blind eye to. You don't see that on CNN. They were being slaughtered on a daily basis. And the Russian Federation felt they needed to go in to protect those people and deliver them. So they took the Crimea, which was traditionally part of Russia, a few years back. Now, after taking the Crimea a few years back, they now focused on Donetsk, which is another region, and one other region, I've forgotten the name now, in eastern Ukraine. And a few days ago, they marched in and literally occupied the place and saved the people that were being slaughtered there from the Ukrainian forces. And then they had to go a step further. And why did they have to do that? They felt threatened by the fact that the Ukrainian president and the Ukrainian government were too close to the West and were about to join NATO, or refused to say that they would never join NATO. And the greatest fear of the Russians is for a country on their direct border to join NATO. That would result in catastrophic things going on. And they didn't want that. So what they've done, they've gone in, and unfortunately, they have invaded. And I have no doubt that they will remove the president. They will put another president there who will guarantee the fact that the Ukraine will never join NATO and will continue to be almost like a buffer state between the Western powers, Western Europe, and Russia. That is the only way that the Russians will feel comfortable. Now, look at the other side. NATO has built up so many armaments and so much arms and nuclear bases all over Europe, right on the doorstep of Russia. The only ally that Russia has is Belarus, and of course the Chinese, and of course the Indians, who have refused to condemn what they're doing and has vetoed any acts against Russia at the Security Council, which I'm quite pleased about. Now, I'm not saying that I'm pro-Russia, I'm anti-Ukraine, or I'm anti-NATO. All I'm saying is that there is more than one side to this story. And we in this country have to stop relying on the BBC, CNN, and Al Jazeera to churn out what they are making you believe is the truth. It's not the truth. There's more than one side to the story. There's a different perspective, and there must be understanding, and you must have an informed opinion. Form whatever it is that you believe to be, your position based on informed facts, not on what CNN tells you or what they want you to believe. Now, there's another aspect to all this, which is very disturbing. Why is it that Poland and all the other European countries are barring fleeing refugees from the Ukraine to enter their borders? And why is it that the Ukrainian police are not allowing Africans? They are removing Africans from the free trains that they've provided for nationals of other countries, including India, Ukrainians themselves, people from all over the world, to flee the Ukraine. They're providing transport for them, but they're removing Africans from those trains. And the European countries are blocking Africans from entering. You don't get much reportage on that on CNN or on BBC. I give credit to BBC, they reported it once earlier today, but outside of that, CNN doesn't mention. This is racism, and it's unacceptable. And the most important thing is to appreciate the fact that the bottom line is that the white people in the Ukraine are entitled to flee and run away from Russian bombs, and they're entitled to enter Europe. But the black people, African students in Ukraine, are being barred from doing so by the Ukrainians themselves and also by the European countries. Now, what does that tell you about the mindset of these people? Putin said something. He has described the Ukrainian government as basically fascists, right-wing nationalists and fascists who are essentially racist in character. I would have to say that I agree with that. But having said that, I do condemn the fact that civilians are being killed. This is unacceptable and this is wrong. And I call for peace on all sides. peace, restraint, and understanding. But we in the rest of the world must understand that this clash and this conflict will ultimately affect us all, and I'll tell you why. It will affect us because, as I said earlier, ultimately there will be a clash between Russia on the one hand, backed by China and perhaps India and a few other very powerful countries in the world. And by the way, China and India also have massive nuclear arsenals. But on the one hand, you will have Russia backed by China, perhaps India, one or two others. And on the other hand, you will have NATO in its full force and, backed by America. And, these are two very, very powerful sides. And what's going to happen? And it's being planned, it's being orchestrated. Just like Joseph Okechukwu has said, great writer and commentator of Nigerian stock, great guy. He analyzed it very, very well. I'd urge you to go and watch his videos. What's happening has been planned from years and years ago. It's going to happen. It's being provoked. The Russians are being provoked into this. And what's going to ultimately happen is that there will be a clash. The likelihood is that ultimately the Europeans and NATO will end up, in a military conflict. But there will be something on the border, there'll be a miscalculation, there'll be a skirmish. Russian troops will end up tangling with NATO forces somewhere along the western border of the Ukraine. This is after the occupation has been completed. There's going to be some form of military action between the two. Now, when that happens and NATO comes together to face the Russians, it'll be an overwhelming force. It'll be difficult for the Russians to contain them. And Putin has said something. He has said, we anticipate this, that when they come against us, the might of NATO all together combined against us will be too strong for us. We'll take them on, but they'll be very, very strong, difficult to handle. And what we will then do is fall back on our nuclear arsenal. Now, what's that telling you? He's telling the world that if you try us, if you push us in the Ukraine or anywhere else, or if you allow Finland or Sweden to join NATO, or if you press us on the Ukraine and try to liberate the Ukrainians, or try to come in or interfere with us in any way, that we will ultimately fight you with, military tactics and ordinary armaments, conventional forces and conventional armaments. But if we are pushed to it and you appear to be defeating us, which you may well be able to, we will resort to nuclear weapons. Russia has the second largest stock of nuclear weapons on planet Earth, second only to the Americans. And of course, China, that's what's watching and is clearly behind Russia, has the third largest. How does this is going to affect the whole world, the entire world, including Africa. So we need to pray, like Joe Okechukwu keeps saying. We need to pray, we need to be informed, we need to be sensitive, and we need to understand that this thing that's unfolding is a very sad one. Sadly, it is also prophetic, and by God's grace, He will deliver us from this terrible, terrible conflict that is about to be foisted on the world. What I've outlined here may not happen immediately. It's what you call a totalitarian tiptoe, as David Icke would say. It's step by step, well calculated, but it's going to happen. And this will lead to the Third World War. It doesn't mean it'll lead to the end of the world, but it'll lead to the Third World War. Now, we pray against this. I hope I'm wrong. But our position as Nigerians and Africans is to be informed, to be prayerful, and to pray that we are not affected in a way that is something that we can never recover from. That's my prayer for this country. And I suggest we focus on things like that rather than constantly looking within and criticizing one another and insulting one another and talking about things that are essentially irrelevant, because right now we are fighting for the survival of humanity from a very, very evil force that wants to plunge the world into a Third World War. Now let me end with this. I deplore the killing and the slaughter of civilians. I want to be very clear on that. And my heart goes out to what the Ukrainian people are suffering today. They're being bombed left, right, and center. They're being driven from their cities. Hundreds of thousands of refugees are pouring over the borders into Europe. They've been thoroughly destabilized. They're being humiliated, and they're being stripped bare. But it was predictable and it was avoidable. President Zelensky made a fundamental mistake. He played into the hands of the West. He allowed them to use him as a puppet. They pushed him over the brink, caused him to provoke Russia. Russia attacked, and now they've left him all on his own. What is happening there? The blame has to be fully and squarely on the shoulders of the president. 1 month ago, I predicted this would happen, and I posted it. And I warned, and I sent a warning to Zelensky, and the Ukrainians, that they needed to do what? Get sense, as the Nigerians would say. Well, they didn't get the sense. Now the West has now left them. NATO has now left them. They are all on their own. Their cities are being bombed. Their people are being killed. They're being pauperized. They're being tortured. They're being bombed to smithereens by the Russians. And nobody's there to help them other than to say, oh, sanctions, sanctions, sanctions. Yes, of course they'll impose sanctions. But this is the first chapter of a very long book, because it'll get a lot worse. And when the real conflict starts, Ukraine will be on the front line of battle. And that is where the tragedy will really be made manifest. When nuclear bombs are thrown over European cities, Eastern cities, Russian cities, American cities, and when they touch Africa as well, and there's a major conflict here, that is when people will appreciate the fact that when I said Zelensky needed to get sense and not be used by the West to goad Russia and provoke her into doing what she's doing today, that I was absolutely right. Well, let's keep praying. We pray for Ukraine, we pray for Russia, we pray for America, we pray for NATO, we pray for everybody.